Your host, Devin Shea, joined with us here via Zoom. I'd like to please welcome Dr. Taryn Morrissey. She's the professor of public administration and policy over at American University. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us here on ETN this afternoon.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a mom myself of a toddler that is definitely in all of the baby groups and the toddler groups and all of our friends, all we're talking about is the childcare cost, the difference just in the last couple years. So we thought we'd bring you on as an expert in the childcare costs, especially around the U.S., to give us a little more information, right, that we can base all of our judgments on. So let's just get a broad view of just how expensive childcare costs has gotten, and what is that percentage? I don't know if you have numbers, or just that spike in the last few years, just since really COVID.
Sure. As any parent knows, including myself, childcare is really, really expensive. So the Department of Labor published a database about that includes childcare costs across the country by county. And adjusted for inflation, this is about between $6,000 and about $19,000 per child per year. So if you have more than one child who's young, multiply that cost. And that for infants, the cost is even more expensive, nearly $29,000 per child per year in some places.
I mean, honestly, like I said, I have a child, so I know that, but just hearing those numbers are so staggering. So how is it affected, I guess? I know that there was, during COVID, there was some kind of subsidy, right, that aided childcare costs, that helped, but recently that has been, it expired of some sort, right? So can you dive in a little bit more on what the subsidy did and where it's kind of leaving a gap now?
Sure. And the reason why childcare is so expensive is because it's very labor intensive. The quality of childcare is built on that relationship and consistency between the adult and the child. And so you have 3 or 4 infants per adult. You can't cram, 100 infants into a lecture hall with one adult. That would be awful and chaos. And so because of that, it's about 70% of operating costs go to labor, to payroll. And so, yes, there were these pandemic relief funds through the American Rescue Plan that provided childcare stabilization grants. And so these were grants that went to programs to pay their payroll, to pay rent, and all these other operating expenses. And they expired in September of 2023. And so that we don't have great data yet on what that means for the childcare sector broadly, but anecdotally, we've definitely heard of programs either closing classroom doors because of staffing shortages or raising tuition for parents, or closing their programs altogether.
Yeah, I mean, with those childcare places, those centers closing, you also have to think about the opposite end, right? You can't put a number or a dollar amount on your child's safety. And peace of mind that when you're at work, you know that your child is being loved and taken care of, almost as a very second place to what you could do as that own child's parent. Almost to the point where, you talk about the stress of it all, the expense of it all. Is it affecting parents in the workforce saying, you know what, I'm not making any profit. Everything that I make is going straight into paying for childcare, and the stress on top of that just isn't worth it. I'm going to stay home. Are we seeing numbers of people leaving the workforce because of this?
I don't have recent numbers of parents leaving the workforce, but just generally, we know that the cost of childcare, as it increases, parents' employment decreases. So, or on the flip side, a 10% decrease in the cost of childcare would lead to about a 0.25% to 2.5% increase in parental labor force participation. And so there are parents who are sitting out of the labor force, or not working as much, or not earning as much as they would if there were affordable childcare. And their families lose out immediately for economic security, but also in Social Security and everything else. When they re-enter the workforce or when they retire, they're at a loss.
So what can we do about this? What are some large-scale potential fixes for the nation as a whole when it comes to affordable childcare?
I would argue we know what to do to make childcare more affordable and accessible. We just don't do enough of it. So we have a childcare subsidy program that provides subsidies largely through vouchers to low-income working families, and that helps access childcare, particularly licensed, regulated childcare. And it helps support parents' employment. It only reaches about 1 in 6 eligible children. And there are many middle-income families who are struggling to pay for childcare too. So there's a lot more above the eligibility line who could benefit. We have universal preschool programs, which are fantastic. My own children started school at age 3, whereas they would have in other locations at age 5. And we know that in DC, for example, the implementation of universal preschool increased maternal labor force participation by 10 percentage points. That's massive. But most states don't have universal preschool. Head Start only serves about 40% of children of 3 and 4-year-olds in poverty. So we have kind of a smattering of programs, but that aren't funded to what they could do.
So what is your message? If you can leave, parents that are watching here at East Texas Now, what is your message to them? A message of encouragement, of where to go, of resources, anything. What do you want parents to take away from this conversation?
I definitely want parents to advocate for themselves, to make this issue known. I think it's getting more and more attention, which is fantastic. But really, the bottom line is we're investing the least when it matters the most in terms of children's development, when parents are at their lowest earning years of their careers, and we can make different decisions.
Investing the least when it matters the most. That is a catchy phrase. Once again, Dr. Taryn Morrissey, thank you so much for joining us here on East Texas Now, talking all things child care costs. Hope you have a great day, and we'll talk again soon.
You too. Thanks so much.